Hello, I'm Crawford Allan. I'm the Senior Director of Traffic in the US, based at WWF US, and I work on wildlife trade, particularly wildlife crime.
Interesting question is, why are you in Tällberg right now?
Well, obviously I want to come to Tällberg because it's a beautiful, beautiful place to be, and the Swedish people are wonderful, but also we are very fortunate to have been invited here to hold our annual meeting of the traffic network globally, where we come together to work out and try and find better, faster, more impactful solutions to the challenges that are facing people around the world caused by the trade in wildlife.
So what would you consider being hot right now?
Well, I think everybody in this sphere of influence related to trade knows that the hot subject is elephants and rhinos and tigers. These three species are being impacted to levels that we've never seen before in terms of the problems of poaching driven by trade that is caused by the demand for their parts, particularly in Asia.
So what is your expectation of this meeting?
With this meeting, we're at a critical juncture in trying to formulate new solutions based upon a new platform that we've helped create of the highest level of political will to combat the issue. So now we have people like President Obama of the United States. We have leadership from the highest levels of government and royalty in the United Kingdom. We have international fora, including the UN, including ASEAN, including APEC, including the G8, that are recognizing that wildlife trafficking not only is hugely impactful upon biodiversity and wildlife around the world, but also it's starting to really undermine the benefits that people get from their living nature around them. And actually it's causing, in some cases, civil unrest. It's even funding and fueling terrorism. And it's proving to have a greater and broader impact than anybody ever expected before. So what we need to do now is, now that we, through this global campaign on illegal wildlife trade that we've undertaken in the past year, we've built this major interest, we've built this high level of political will. Now we have to turn the words of the politicians into action on the ground. We now have to figure that out. How do we transform the will of President Obama into real life impact? That means we see that poachers and that traders and traffickers become jailed, they get the deterrence effect, and we find that there's no longer their ability to go out there and wipe out hundreds of elephants, for example.
How is it possible that non-governmental organizations can get this extreme result to make people like that interested in a conservation issue?
I think this was partly the role of organizations like Traffic, like the World Wildlife Fund, that have brought this about, but also the horrific situation on the ground is speaking for itself. When you see video of 300 elephants slaughtered in Cameroon by hundreds of men on horseback coming across the country with weapons just to mow them down, take their ivory and then sell them to traders to be shipped to Asia, that sort of image, those sorts of images and those sorts of challenges elevate this issue in their own right. And what we have simply done is we have very strategically targeted our interventions at the right people at the right time. We've gotten the right information to the right people in the right way, and it's caused a sea change, a catalytic effect that has had a knock-on, so that it's become the buzzword within certain circles. It's become the issue of the moment that actually we hope will become the issue of the next 5 years. And currently we have to make sure that that happens, that the interest, the investment and the action really will continue and percolate out, so that we have a sustainable solution to this problem, and it isn't just something that appears on the front page of the newspaper today and tomorrow is forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a crisis. I mean, as I can see, in 10 years we might have no elephants. In 10 years we might have no tigers. Are you hopeful?
If you'd asked me that a year ago, my response would have been very different. In terms of hope, I think I have never been so hopeful as I am now, in spite of the challenges, because we've had success, because combining the strengths of WWF and Traffic we have seen that we can make a difference. We can get to the highest level of the world's political leaders, and they are hearing us. They are listening to us, and they are reacting. And with that reaction, we think we're going to make a major, major difference. I never thought we'd get to this stage. I never thought I'd get to the stage where, personally, I was meeting the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, who was telling me how serious this issue was and how she was going to make sure that the US was going to take action, and strong action. In my wildest dreams, I would never expected that. We're there. We've gone even further than that, much, much further. So I'm far, far hopeful now than I have been in a very long time.
In trying to fight this kind of criminality, there are two parts. One part is in the field, try to curb, to stop the poachers. But on the other side, also you have the consumers that are driving these illegal activities. How would we be able to stop Asian people to consume these things that they've done for a long time?
I think in part it's by not telling them to stop. It's about helping them to understand, come and draw their own conclusions about the future and what the impact of their behaviours are having, not just on wildlife but on other more important social issues too. We have to help them understand and make this feel that this really isn't a fashion that they really want to buy into. We have to turn the tides, because currently it is a fashion. It's a fashionable issue to take rhino horn as a tonic to help you be cool amongst your peers. It's fashionable to buy an expensive ivory carving and have it on your shelf to show to your friends. We have to make that, to turn that around to be the opposite feeling, that it's no longer fashionable. It's super uncool, not super cool, and we have to get to use the right people in the right way to bring those messages forward. And what I mean by the right people is, people who are able to influence others in society in Asia. So that might be business leaders, it might be politicians, it might be celebrities, it might be just a school child talking to their grandfather or their grandmother. We have to get to the right people to drive that change. And that's what we're doing now with our research. We're finding out exactly how we do that, and we're now implementing strategies to get to the right people to take our messages and take that voice forward in their own words to bring about a change of influence in Asia. But let's not forget, this isn't just about Asia. We're not just pointing fingers at Asia. There's a consumption of illegal wildlife everywhere in the world. And I come from the US. I'm based there. And in fact, the US is among the biggest of the consumers of illegal wildlife on the planet. Ivory is actually an issue of concern there too. We're seeing that, in fact, some estimates by researchers have shown that potentially the volume of trade in ivory in the US is probably about one of the third largest markets by volume. Doesn't mean it's illegal ivory, but there is a good proportion of that ivory that is also illegal. So what we're doing now is we're working with the US government. We're talking to them about what they can do about this. And they've taken a decision that they're going to try to really reduce their footprint, their impact on this ivory trade by being a consumer state that is involved in some ways with criminal gangs smuggling ivory to sell within the US as well. So they're going to try and put in place new regulations to prohibit the sale of ivory within the US, and also they're going to be taking a very strong political statement globally. So on October the 7th, they're going to be destroying all their holdings of seized elephant ivory in one day. They're taking a huge rock crushing machine, they're throwing the ivory into the rock crusher and they're destroying it, and they're having a sort of a media press conference to tell the world that the US will not be part of this problem, that the US is going to work to find solutions to the illegal ivory trade.
Another shocking fact is that most of the tigers of the world are found within the border of US.
I wouldn't say most of the tigers of the world, I would say most of the captive tigers of the world are found within the borders of the US. It's very true, there are only 3,200 tigers left in the wild. However, in the US, the estimates are there's between 5,000 and 7,000 tigers in captivity. So these are tigers that have been bred in captivity, have flourished, and are held in private hands. This isn't tigers held within, the formal registered mainstream zoos that are accredited under the Zoological Association, but these are ones held by individuals privately, or they might be in a cage by the side of a road where people charge money to see a tiger. They might be in their backyard in a cage. In some cases, they've even been in their apartment in New York City. it really is an untenable situation. It is a powder keg that is waiting to explode when you have these large, beautiful creatures kept in captivity, often in very, very poor, small, cramped conditions, and you have people who think that they can go in there and hug and pet these cats and treat them as a family member, and it ends in disaster. But also the problem we find with this is nobody knows where these tigers are. Nobody knows what happens to them when they die. There is a risk here that the bones of those tigers, the skins of those tigers, even the meat of those tigers could end up in illegal trade that would further stimulate demand and further perpetuate this horrendous illegal trade. There have actually been some law enforcement cases where they have found tiger meat and tiger skins coming from slaughtered captive tigers in the US entering into trade.
Can I buy a tiger?
In the US, in some places, you could buy a tiger.
So according to American law, that is absolutely okay?
It depends on the state you're in, and it depends whether you try to take that tiger across the state line. But if you were living in a particular state and you held a tiger in captivity and you wanted to sell it, you could sell it to somebody else as long as they kept it within that state.
What are you doing to try to prevent this trade, or this fashion, I would say?
Well, we're working with a group of partners in the US because this is a really big issue, and it covers all of the 50 states of the US. So we're working with a whole range of partners, other organizations that think like us, that feel that this really isn't a wise thing to do, to allow private individuals to keep very dangerous animals on their own personal property, and that these tigers should be kept within formally registered sanctuaries, and tigers should be within registered zoos. And it shouldn't be down to an individual to be able to keep one of these tigers for many reasons, not just the fact that it could be cruel, but also the fact that it could mean that these tigers could enter into illegal trade. So what we're trying to do is change legislation in the US to bring about a situation where that's no longer possible. And we're working on that with a coalition of people to bring together some shifts in regulations that would prevent it.
Okay, thank you very much, Crawford.